Well, hello and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. My name is David Baer. Today I'm chatting with a gentleman named Lucas James about scaling business. He and a friend in college, I think, right, started their marketing agency in a dorm room, and then they scaled over the course of 6 months from 10 to 80 clients. Crazy. And then when you hear the kind of revenue that they've been generating in their first 4 years of business, what they're bringing in on a monthly basis, I think you're going to be floored. Clearly, they know something that you and I may not. And that's why I'm so very happy to have Lucas join me today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's an awesome experience opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. So you own an agency. You run an agency. You have a full team of folks who are helping clients with things like generating leads and finding having their businesses found online and all of those types of things, building their websites, etc. And you're also helping other agencies understand how to do this. And I think that there's some useful principles that probably even translate for other businesses. And I wonder if you can just sort of walk me through a little bit of the philosophy that you have based on the experience that you had over these past 4 years.
Yeah. So great question. I would say for me, the underlying philosophy has been own the things that provide the most value to customers and also just generate the most asset value in general. So for me, I look at it as, I could have just stuck with the agency, but I just like to circle back constantly and think what provides more value to society or to the field. And to me, I feel like having a software, an agency, a community, it just provides more value to the world. And so that's kind of the lens I look at things from. And so I'm always trying to think of what are the best ways to produce value for everyone and help everyone win, make it a win-win for all types of people that I'm working with. So
now we're talking about scaling, but you brought up owning assets. And I think that's, for a business owner who's sort of thinking long-term or longer term, right? There's also benefit there.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think my mentality has shifted quite a bit, especially once you actually get real valuations on your assets, right? Once you actually get to the point where you have people who are professionals who've done hundreds of millions of dollars in sales coming to you and saying, hey, are you interested in selling? I'd love to do a valuation. And then once you get to the point where you have that security, where you know that the things you own are actually valuable and you've scaled yourself out of the day-to-day operations of the business, then you start to think more in terms of just enterprise value, right? So that's the underlying thing I think about always. And Grant Cardone, I didn't actually used to be that into him, but recently I've become a little bit of a fanboy. But I've been reading some of his stuff, and he was talking about how, I think this is common sense, but it's good to hear it. It's just reinvesting everything that you've made into the new ventures that are going to compound at a rate that's way higher than any other kind of investment you could possibly have is definitely the strategy for anyone trying to build long-term sustainable wealth, I would say. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the practical application of what you just said, because as I understand it, you've done that, and I've heard at least 2 examples so far of how you have reinvested into additional assets in your business. So why don't you kind of walk us through that story?
100%. So I will give you the distilled version of sort of the last 4 years, maybe like 30 seconds, 60 seconds. So we started off, it was me and a business partner. We grew pretty quickly. It was obviously still reliant on me on sales, my business partner on operations. The first investment we made was investing into our team because our team was going to replace us, and they did for the basic functions. We then grew to about $1 million run rate. And the next investment was getting me out of sales so I could scale a sales team. That investment took some time. It was actually kind of crappy because we tried to do it for a year and it didn't really work.
Well, there's a lesson there that we're going to circle back to, because clearly, we learn from mistakes, and hopefully there's something there that you can share with us that we can all learn from.
Oh yes, I would love to share it because I lost about $100,000 to it. So I definitely think it's a good thing for everyone to know. But The next investment, once we figured that out, was scaling out our executive team. So that's what's given me the ability to make my most recent investment, which really been over the last 6 months to 12 months, which is the software investment. Because once I scaled myself out of the executive day-to-day functions and the business could pretty much run on its own, then I was able to do my passion projects and the things I think will generate the most enterprise value in the long run. And the cool thing is that once you built an asset that's sustainable on its own, then you're not the bottleneck, you're the accelerator, which is a much more fun position to be in. So for me, I know that my business can grow 30 to 50% without my involvement easily. And it did last year. And I was literally pieced out on the business for about 6 months. I didn't even do anything. I was just coding all day. But now I think we can hit 3 to 5x growth and get to that eight figure mark. But I'm the accelerator because I'm coming in and I'm just, pushing the team and being that catalyst for growth because I have the most vested interest in the business, right? I don't even know if I'm the most talented. I think I just have the most vested interest in seeing it grow to a massive scale. So that is a really fun position to be in. Hopefully that sheds some light on the question. So
yeah, totally. I want to circle back, as I said, to the sales team growth challenge that you had, though. What happened there? What was the discovery that you made?
Well, there's a really good quote by Charlie Munger called "You show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcomes." I don't think we had the right incentive structure in place for the right kind of talent. And we were constantly trying to figure out how to scale a team where basically they would start at a low hourly rate and then they would work their way up. I think that's a great system for BDRs, which are business development representatives, and all they're doing is just booking meetings. But I don't think that's the best system for talented closers of agency contracts. Because if you actually know how to close the deals, why would anyone in their right mind who actually knows how to close a lot of business work with you? It just doesn't make any sense. They're going to get scooped up by someone else. So what we did was we increased the base, which this might even sound low to some people, but we increased it from like 15 an hour to 25 an hour for these closers. And we gave them a draw. That was another big piece. So they had their commission. Once their commission exceeded their pay, then they would start making commission on top of their pay. That was a big thing for us too, which kept our initial first few months of scale overhead low on these people. But yeah, that was the biggest thing, was finding people who came in the box. I didn't have to train them. They weren't being trained on my dime. I just put them in the position. I said, you have to close a deal every 20 hours you work. And the deal has to be at minimum $1,000 monthly recurring revenue, or you're not going to get any more opportunity. And I have to let you go. And that's it. Because I already had the deal flow. I already had the people coming in the door inbound, right? So I knew that I could get them. And then once we got the inbound closer up and running and scaled, then it was all about getting, outbound scaled as well. So it was just that twofer that eventually ended up working. So.
But you sort of said you hit a rough patch there trying to get that to happen. What was the challenge?
It was the training part. It was the fact that I wasn't going for people who were already pros, and I was thinking that I could just train people into becoming pros, which again is great for people who are maybe like the I would even take that. I know I started that sentence off by saying it's great for people who are kind of like entry level and not the main closers of deals. But I think I would even revise that statement now, because I honestly will never hire another person, maybe until we hit 1,000 employees, who doesn't already know how to do the exact thing that I need done. Training should, in my opinion, should only be about company culture, critical processes, and updates to past processes that are now different, but they shouldn't be about teaching someone to do something they've never done before. That is a requirement for them to do their job. And that was just, I guess, me not having any real corporate experience before I launched this business. I really didn't have any business experience at all. And that was a failure on my end. So yeah, that was the struggle. And instead of making, an extra $100,000 that year in just personal take home pay, I invested it and we literally just broke even. I didn't make any new money that year. which was a bummer. But then we finally started growing, and that was really when we started to scale.
So there's lots of lessons in hiring that we could probably spend the rest of our time together on, and perhaps we'll do that in another conversation. But I want to talk a little bit about scaling agencies, because now you're starting to work with, you certainly speak to a lot of agency owners, and I imagine you're seeing some of the challenges that they're dealing with, some of the opportunities that they're seeing that they're not seeing that you are, and I wonder if you can sort of speak to a little bit of that. What are the and having experienced myself knowing this space, I know that a marketing agency is really no different from most other businesses' struggles and missed opportunities. Right. So what are some of the things you're seeing out there with regard to challenges and opportunities?
Yeah, so challenges I have, and this definitely applies to all service businesses. Challenges, I have a pretty statistical view on this, because every time a new member comes into my program, we onboard them, we ask them 20 questions, and one of them is, what's the biggest challenge you're experiencing right now with your agency? So I happen to know statistically what it is. And the most commonly occurring one is, probably to no one's surprise, is lead generation or lead acquisition. That's the main thing. And it's funny, because is that really the thing they need the most help with in the short term or midterm? Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's just the thing that causes the most pain, but it's not actually the thing they need the most help with. But everyone comes in the funnel thinking that's the thing they need the most help with. And the reason I say that is because one thing I've done differently this year, and the reason I know we're going to minimum hit $3 million in sales this year, there's no way we're not going to minimum hit that, is because we don't need to get more meetings. We just needed to change the way we were closing people and charge the people who could pay more money triple, because that was the value we were providing. And they, without even thinking about it, will just pay because of the way we structured the offer. So, agencies might come through thinking, I need meetings, but really they just don't even know how to get the most value from customers and deliver the most value. And that is actually what they really need, but they think it's leads a lot of the time. Opportunities, I would say, with a little plug to bubble.io, I'm not affiliated with them, but I definitely think they're the future. I've been saying on Twitter constantly that bubble.io will be the most valuable business in the next 5 years. You may not know who they are, because they're really
I sort of think is it a white label app builder or something, or am I thinking of something completely different?
So no, you're right. It is a white label app builder. You could think of it as kind of like the next version of the internet, I think. I know people talk about blockchain and everything. Maybe one day they'll have some elements of that in the future, but I think of it more as it will dramatically reduce the barriers to entry for people to build software and scale software, which will make more people, more entrepreneurs, especially more digital marketers, because I'm seeing this happen inside Agency Go constantly now, because we have our own subgroup in the group dedicated to just software. But more agency owners will become more like Steve Jobs, in a sense where they're the marketing guy and not really the tech guy, because he was more just focused on product, but they know enough about the tech to actually implement scale and extreme margins and unlock extreme value for the customers.
Yeah.
That's where everything's heading, because Bubble is the most comprehensive builder of apps out there for anyone who didn't learn how to do full custom development.
I think I should have said it's low code or no code app building. Is that really what it is?
Yeah, and it's funny because it pisses off a lot of developers. It even pisses me off a little bit, because I did teach myself to a certain degree. I'd say probably a 5 out of 10 on full stack development when I was first teaching myself this year software development. I kind of feel like it's a chip on my shoulder, because people will say, well, you're not a real developer, which is, I guess, kind of true. But the thing is, to actually become capable of scaling apps on Bubble, you need to be able to what's called extend the application, which means you need to add all this custom code to it in order to actually make it do anything valuable. And you have to understand how, to finish, all types of software work. So if I had to summarize it in one sentence, think of it as the difference between MS-DOS and what we use now. That's the difference. It's like are you going to tell someone who uses Python predominantly or some other popular language that they're not a developer because they don't work with completely low-level programming languages that really aren't in fashion or haven't been in fashion for most people in the last 30 years? No, you just think that they're smart because they're using something that's more up to date and a more popular operating system and more useful one for today's applications. And so that's how I see Bubble, is it's going to completely open the door for all service-based people, which is why I'm even mentioning this. All professionals, all service-based businesses to make way more money and help their customers scale way faster through low code, no code applications, essentially.
Can you give me a sort of a practical application for the, how it might get used in a business?
Yeah, well, I mean, I use it for all of our client management. So I built a CRM that we use to manage all of our clients. We are in beta testing on that, but one that's already actively being used by a lot of people is our partner directory, because I built a kind of it looks a lot like LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Think of it as LinkedIn Sales Navigator for digital marketing agencies and a community for digital marketing agencies. I built that, and so here's the thing. I was able to build that, and this isn't because I'm like some crazy genius. I just have a lot of time on my hands, and I'm very passionate, and because the software that is Bubble makes everything so much easier, I was able to do all of that in like 3 months. And it would have normally cost me $100,000. I know, because I've hired full stack developers before. It would have cost me $100,000 minimum to build the exact same thing. It would have taken me double or triple the time with a much lower and slower learning curve around the actual scale up of the software. And so I just think it's going to dramatically change everything. It's going to change everything about how we do business in the next 5 years. So
this is a whole area that I know nothing about, and you've gotten me excited about it. So maybe there is something there, or maybe it's just your enthusiasm. Okay, so by the way, you said something a moment ago that I think will make a lot of business owners jealous, and it's, I have a lot of time in my hands. But you explained earlier how you were able to create this business that allows you to do that. Is that part of what you're helping your clients in the agency scaling world to do?
Yeah, yes. So the thing I always try to stress people is this is something I think hopefully your listeners take to heart, because I kind of wish I did when I first started. Most agencies don't need to actually scale. And that's something I always try to tell people. Like, what I do for anybody that comes into our program, I have them fill out what's called their executive plan. And they write like a free form business plan, usually 1 or 2 pages. And they write down all their goals for the year and everything. And they'll come to me and say, I want to scale. And I'll tell them, look, what you really want is freedom. That's really what you probably want. Unless you want to do what I want, which is I do want to build like a $1 trillion company. That is my goal. But like, you don't need that for most people's desires. Most people don't actually care about doing that. Most people just want to build like $1 million business or even less. And so what I always try to focus on people is what is your goal? And if the goal is to be cash rich and live a life where you can pretty much do whatever you want, it's usually a lot closer than people think. Because to be cash rich, at least in America, and definitely around the world, if you look at USD to other currencies, to be cash rich, you really, it's like 10 grand a month. Which, if you think about it, that's like 20 grand a month of a business, right? You don't need to be making millions of dollars to be cash rich, So I start by trying to define that for people, because to get that freedom, I was able to do it when I got to a multi-million-dollar business, because I wanted to hit a certain scale first before I started investing into some of these things where I didn't have to be actively involved in the growth of the business. But you don't need to get to this size scale. So what I try to look at is, okay, let's identify your goals. Once you've identified your goals, if it's to be cash rich, then most people are capable of doing it right where they are. They don't actually need to grow. They're actually hurting themselves by growing more, because it's pushing their goal farther away from being cash rich. And that's what I first try to identify, is like, what is that immediate goal?
Yeah, it's interesting to talk with a lot of agency owners and many business owners to understand what their net revenue is there's profit margins that are possible in the agency world that are rarely realized, right? It's a very low margin business. So you just gave me an example, which I actually found a little bit surprising, of 50% that the owner can take home. And I'm like, I don't know too many agencies where that happens.
Yeah, a great example. I just actually covered this, and I wish I was coming out a little earlier, but it's been delayed because I've never actually made a physical magazine before, so there's some roadblocks I hit. But I just did this in our first issue of Agency Go magazine. I had a guy on who's one of my business partners. His name's David Riggs with Numa Media. He's got a lot of great content too. Definitely check him out. But the thing is, he has an agency that's a website development agency, and he did something early on that I kind of wish I did, which was he found an outsourced team. Which, by the way, if anyone thinks that, large companies or any size companies don't want to work with outsourced teams, they'd rather work with people in the States, I have learned from working with billion-dollar companies, they do not care. So just focus on getting people jobs, not really where they live, frankly, is how I look at it, because the biggest companies in the world do not care. They don't, at least the ones that I've worked with. That's my little rant. The point being is that the thing he did was he found people in another country who were super hungry, were young college students, I think in India or another country, where the price discrepancy was pretty large from USD to dollars or to their currency. And he motivated them. He made them the exclusive website developers for his company. And then he was focused on sales. And he was making an extreme arbitrage on all of these. They were happy because he was actually paying them a huge amount for what they would normally be getting. And they were young, so they were happy for the opportunity. They wanted to scale it up, So what he identified was arbitrage. And so he'll have an agency that does $100,000 a month. And he actually does have a net profit of 50% on everything. And it's because he's found an arbitrage opportunity in the market that people are really, 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 really wanting. And that's what he's taking home. And so the thing is, most agencies, and this is the thing, most agencies have an average opportunity for their customers. They don't have an opportunity or an offer that's going to blow your socks off. And that's the reason why they don't get those margins, because they're not actually doing any kind of real arbitrage in the market. They're just doing copy paste what every other agency does. And that's why they're not as profitable.
I'm not sure how many interviews I've done with agency owners at this point, but it's dozens upon dozens, and this may be the first time I've actually had an agency owner talk about the offer. It's not a concept that we think about all that much in the agency space. So So one last question here, because we're about to run out of time. You've referenced some people that you follow, right? You said either reluctantly or not. You referenced Grant Cardone. You referenced Charlie Munger. Those two in the same breath was a little strange, but very, very different in spaces. And I'm surprised to hear a reference to Charlie Munger, although maybe he's super old, so he's hip. Maybe that's or a hip fracture. I'm not sure which. The thing that I often run into is I talk a lot about folks who are business operations influencers. It's what we do in our space, and anybody under the age of 30, and whether you're going to admit it or not, you're in that category, I believe, has never heard of the guy that I often reference, who you've talked a lot about his philosophy in the past 20 plus minutes we've been talking, a guy named Michael Gerber.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard him connected to some other people. But
so here's the question I have, because 4 years ago in a college dorm room, you started an agency. You clearly know your stuff. You have developed some really interesting ideas, and you've practiced a lot of really cool things. Where did you learn all this?
So it's a great question. I actually was just talking in another interview about this, because they asked me, how can you get there as quickly as possible? And the way I look at everything is, I think I was raised to have. I'm very, very grateful for my upbringing, because I was raised to have a lot of confidence, because parents were just like very good parents, and they were just always telling me, you know, you could do this, you can do anything you set your mind to, that kind of stuff. So whether it's true or not, I definitely believe that anyone can if they just commit themselves. And so for me, I've had this space to be flexible and innovative. Not all people have that opportunity. I seized the opportunity, you know, junior, senior year of college, where I was like, I am not going to waste this opportunity, because when I go out of college, I might have to go get a job, and then it's gonna be harder for me to actually start a business and all this stuff. I'm gonna take this opportunity when I have a lot of time on my hands to actually go and scale something. So I had the benefit of that free time even early on. So I would say that is one reason I've been able to learn some of this stuff so quickly, is just having free time even early on, and the ability to do that. But really, it's a lot of it is time compression. So it's finding in every single scenario 100 people and making a list, 100 people who have done the exact thing that you want to do, creating a model that will derive conclusions and comparisons and differences from those 100 people, writing it all down, and then saying, what are the best people of this cohort doing? And what are the 10, 20, 100 steps, starting from getting to where they are, working backwards, that I need to do to get there? And then the only thing at that point, once you have that clarity, the only thing you have to do is just say, okay, well, I just have to get there as fast as possible. The road has been paved. I just have to get there as fast as possible. So I would say it's you know, hundreds of different books, lectures, podcasts, like a whole consortium of different things, but it ultimately derived from that methodology of the Dream 100, which is Russell Brunson's whole thought process around getting traffic online. But I just took that and I started applying it to everything, like not even just traffic, but business and being a good manager and software development. I just applied it to all fields, essentially.
And if we're going to give credit where credit's due, it's Chet Holmes, not Russell Brunson, who originated that concept.
Oh,
but
did
yes, yeah. And then there was a little Napoleon Hill in what you just taught everybody as well. So that's a good reference point. Lucas James,
I love that.
we are out of time, but I want to make sure that people know where they can hear more from you, because you've been fascinating in what you've shared so far. What's the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, so you can reach me going to anywhere you listen to your podcast. Just search for How to Scale an Agency, and you can take a listen. We interview in 15-minute chunks hundreds of agencies and ask them, how do they get to where they want to go? What revenue are they doing? What strategies do they have to get to $10 million plus? So yeah, I'd love to have you follow me there. Listen, we want to share it with as many people as possible. So anywhere you do your podcast, How to Scale an Agency. So
absolutely. Well, we will leave a link to How to Scale an Agency, the podcast, on our show notes. And Lucas James, thank you so very much for hanging out with me. It's been a treat.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Indeed. Folks, this has been another episode of More Perfect Marketing. Thanks for hanging out with us. Have a great day, and we'll see you back on another episode real soon. Bye-bye.